Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Lavoie. I'm councillor for North Cod Regional Rural Board, and I'm chair of the Planning Advisory Committee. I'm looking at all the faces, and you know what? I see something wrong. It's not the masks for change. We've all got hands. So hopefully you've been able to enjoy summer this far, and I know I have. And quite a lot of time to work through. So the work that we're doing. We have here tonight also on the Planning Advisory Committee, we have Councillor Joan Delaney. We have Deputy Mayor, this next one term, Marcia Maxwell, and of course we have Mayor Harry Hogenboom. And Councillor Jeff Banks should be arriving shortly. We also have other councillors here that are interested in the subject matter. I see Councillor Kathy Livingston sitting in the back. She doesn't have the same tan as us. And Councillor Carolyn Brzee is sitting here in the second row. And Councillor Claire Smith, you may have heard, is currently on parental leave. And here comes Councillor Banks. We won't stand up and applaud.
Sorry I'm late.
And Mrs. Banks is coming. He needed her to keep an eye on her. And Councillor Ron Pollard is unable to join us tonight to the recent death of his brother. We're at the wake this afternoon. So I'd like to extend you all a warm welcome, whether you're on the live stream or whether you're in person. And we're using Facebook live stream tonight, and hopefully it will work. Now, we consider this to be a very important and it's being recorded so that you'll be able to go back and check it out down the road. And that's also our standard public practice. Now, before we go through the agenda, I'd just like to run very quickly the process, why we're doing it, and why it was so important to actually meet the public. The formal meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee, and we have a set agenda that we're going to follow. And there are paper copies of the agenda package table. It's a statutory public for the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment resulting from the tourist campground scientific study by Fotenn under contract with the Township. First on the agenda was the formal steps that we have to do for council. And then we'll go to Fotenn, presentation for the process to date, and then they'll get into an overview of the proposed amendment. Then the next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Questions will probably be answered by Fotenn. And we're going to forward posterity all of your comments, because there's no such thing as a bad comment. Like the fact there's no such thing as a bad question. They're all good. They're all worth taking. And then I'm hoping that during the comment section that all present one by one at the podium, and that you state your name for the record. If you've got any questions, part of your comments, Fotenn and the committee. We ask that you consider limiting your comments to 5 minutes. The lights go at 11 o'clock. So 5 minutes each. We'll be pushing it, but everybody has their opportunity. Depending on how many comments that we have, there will also possibly be quite understandable that if the first person who makes a comment goes back and sits down, and person number 35 has something to say, that will trigger other comments. It's important also. We'll be able to provide written comments to planning at rideaulakes.ca, either during the meeting or after the meeting, and those comments will all be considered prior to any decision made by the Planning Advisory Committee on its recommendation. And those watching via live stream may wish to do that also. Fourth part of the meeting will include a brief committee discussion. Not expected that the committee will make a formal recommendation to council on the proposal. We want to get the content. We want as much information as we can get. And then the committee, after reviewing the comments and considering them, will try and come up to a recommendation. So whatever you've seen right now, there could be decisions, because comments, some of which we've already, very interesting, very useful. And they have to be discussed. You can't just take the piece of paper and throw it out and say, oh yeah, we looked at it. So every comment. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll just do an outline of the next steps of the process. And we really do want to hear all of you. If I find that somebody is going on kind of rambling, I ask quietly terminate, get to the point so that somebody else has to. So we'll go through the standard agenda right now as we do it every time. So first item we do is roll call. The second item is the adoption of the agenda. Too much paper in some. Okay, I have it moved by Councillor Banks and seconded by Councillor Delaney that this committee adopt the agenda as submitted. All in agreement? Two. Next, do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Nobody here has any, on this committee has any conflict of interest or anything else. And item number 4 is the Tourist Campgrounds Land Use Study, proposed zoning bylaw and official plan amendments, ZBA-10-2022 and OPA number 7. And I'd like to invite Fotenn to come up and present their slides and information. And I'd ask the committee members to hold all your questions in the presentation. And then our further committee comments will hold so we get the discussion. And then after the presentation, we'll move into public comment questions. So I'm going to get that right here. Over to you guys. You know, they always say that a cord is too long for its purpose, and then the ones you get stuck with are the short ones.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you. My name is Yuko Leclerc. I'm a planner with Fotenn Planning and Design. And as you noted, I am here this evening presenting applications. I will do my very best. Thank you. I appreciate the reminder. And if I ever do, during this course of this evening, quiet down, please point it out, and I will do my best to speak up. Thank you. My name is Yuko Leclerc. I'm a planner with Fotenn Planning and Design. I'll be presenting the applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment that come out of the land use study around tourist campground. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, committee. Good evening, everyone from the public that's here. I'll start the PowerPoint with just a very brief outline. I'll provide a little bit of background, review why we are here this evening, and a little bit of a recap on this study, this project, where we're at, what we've done thus far, just to bring everyone up to speed on that. I'll review very briefly the purpose of the meeting and then speak about the current official plan and zoning in a very brief way, and then discuss, and then I'll describe the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, and then wrap up. Following my wrap up, that'll be the opportunity for everyone here to come up and ask questions. So the study that we've undertaken has come out of a process that's taken a bit of time. Last spring, in April of 2021, staff of the township undertook a policy regime review for tourist campgrounds. That came out of concerns that had been raised from members of the public to members of the planning committee and council. That was followed by a review of certain standards around Z241 or park model trailers, which fed into a background study around interim control bylaws. For everyone that's not aware, an interim control bylaw is effectively a freeze on development of a particular type. In this instance, a interim control bylaw was considered by council freeze any development of new tourist campgrounds or any expansions to existing tourist campgrounds. Council approved an interim control bylaw in August of 2021. Under the Planning Act, a requirement of an interim control bylaw is that a land use study be undertaken by the municipality on the given subject. An interim control bylaw can be in effect for up to 1 year, and it can be extended from there for a maximum of one additional. In October of 2021, this land use study was initiated with these objectives: to identify land use planning issues and options around tourist campgrounds, identify those options and propose and recommend some for planning advisory committee. And out of those, if there were any amendments to the official plan or zoning bylaw, those would be captured and addressed through the land use study. In October of 2021, the study initiated with 3 stakeholder workshops, as well as some site visits to 3 different campgrounds in Rideau Lakes. We followed that up with some meetings with regulatory agencies, with various ministries, conservation authorities, and so forth. And those events, those consultations, fed into a draft of the issues and options report, which was really just presenting what we heard and some options for responding to those items. That report was issued in January. This 2021, it was 2022, followed by an open house in February. And the report itself was finalized in March, along with and that finalization included the incorporation of specific recommendations to the planning advisory. Those recommendations were presented to the committee in a series of non-statutory public meetings in March. Following those recommendations, planning committee deliberated on the matter and made decisions on the recommendations that would be pursued through the final report of the land use study. That report was issued, I believe it says June, I believe it was July. An initial draft was provided to the township in June, and then a finalized version was completed in July and made public prior to this public meeting in August. And tonight is the statutory public meeting. So a statutory public meeting is a requirement under the Planning Act that I'll speak about. The issues and options report that I referenced we heard a lot from the community, we heard a lot from different stakeholders, campground owners, we heard of so many issues that we tried to group them by themes rather than individual issues, and we landed at these themes as being sort of the fundamental concerns and items that would need to be addressed by this study in some fashion through the amendment to the plans. The issues and options report also presented a total of 11 options for planning advisory committee. Of these options, we were instructed to pursue the official plan amendments, not all of them, but several of them. A number of zoning bylaw amendments, again, not all of them, but several of them. All of these site plan control amendments that we proposed, as well as amendments to the noise bylaw. The Planning Advisory Committee also supported the creation of a licensing bylaw and an administrative monetary penalty bylaw as separate processes that would pursue sort of following this land study to help follow up and implement it. Recommendations that we made around the shoreline preservation bylaw, site alteration bylaw, and tree bylaw were not implemented and supported by PAC, and then a community planning purposes and other options. But we did not recommend active. Or did not pursue. The purpose of the meeting this evening is to satisfy the requirements under the Planning Act for plan and zoning bylaw amendment, first and foremost. It's also to provide you and those watching online with an overview of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments that are being proposed, and provide an opportunity to seek feedback themselves, whether it's comments or questions, clarify any questions, and for Planning Advisory Committee to consider and to ask any questions as well. So the Township's new official plan that was adopted earlier this year and approved by the United Counties in July has a number of policies that are relevant to tourist campgrounds. There are quite a few, but just some select policies are shown on the slide here. Some of these are fundamental policies and objectives of the Township official plan. So I won't read these in detail, but I think it's worth noting that there's a desire that's made very clear in the Township's official plan to found development, land use, and sort of future direction in the municipality on three pillars of social, environmental, and economic prosperity. The first two objectives in the official plan pertain to protecting and improving the quality of the environment, as well as preserving and enhancing the rural, recreational, and vacation-oriented flavor of the township. These are two very important goals to the township, and it's made very clear by them to pursue, and these are particularly relevant to campground. The official plan has certain sections that provide direction on other aspects that relate to land use planning, such as waterfront development. Section 2.2 has some great policies around how to protect water bodies while also developing on waterfronts, whether it's residential or non-residential. Section 2.3 has some policies around development, economic growth, really recognizing the township as a recreational and tourism destination. There is a section in the official plan that pertains directly to tourist land uses, including tourist campgrounds. That section is 3.852. Number of subsections for that particular policy, so I'm not going to read them all. I'm not going to do them in detail right now, although that's certainly covered in the report that's available. And what this policy does is it recognizes that tourist campgrounds have significant development potential. It can significantly impact environmental considerations, water bodies, natural hazards, species of risk, things like that, woodlands, and they have significant impact. The zoning bylaw that currently is in place includes provisions and a definition of tourist campgrounds. So tourist campgrounds are a specific defined use in the zoning bylaw. So they are set aside as their own land use. And there are performance standards or provisions, things like setbacks and so forth, that pertain to tourist campgrounds as well as other tourist. There are also a number of site-specific zones in this particular tourist commercial zone that relate to a certain number of campgrounds. I show on the slide here that there are 10 site-specific tourist commercial zones. There's actually, I believe, only 2 that pertain to tourist campgrounds. So some of the requirements that apply to tourist campgrounds are that front and side yards have to be a minimum of 10 meters for any building or structure. A rear yard has to be 15 meters. Every tourist campsite must have a minimum area of 60 square meters, about 650 square feet or so. They're permitted a maximum deck area of 30 square meters and a maximum of 30% lot coverage over the entire. Now, there are other performance standards. I list these ones in particular because they pertain to some of the recommendations and amendments that we proposed, and that I'll speak to. So following the presentation of issues and options to the Planning Advisory Committee and decisions that came out of that, 8 amendments to the official plan are being proposed. The first is to create a policy that encourages shoreline improvement for existing and new tourist campgrounds of 30 meters, to increase water setbacks or allow the increase of water setbacks. Currently, the official plan speaks to a default sort of 30-meter setback for water bodies. This is a default standard that's more or less been in effect in the province for over 20 years. There's a more recent direction that speaks to doing site-specific evaluations that could result in setbacks of between 30 and 90 meters. So the policy that we're proposing would implement that and require that each new or expanding campground undertake such an evaluation to determine if 30 meters is sufficient or whether a greater setback should be applied to those individuals. There are a number of studies that are also recommended. A lake impact study is recommended, would be required for any new or expanding tourist campground, and that undertakes or requires a zoning amendment or a site plan control application. Campgrounds would be subject to policies that limit light spillover. So if you have a campground, you wouldn't be allowed to have sort of upward facing lighting or anything like that. There's policies in the official plan around reducing the amount of light impacts on other properties, and those would be applied specifically to campgrounds. Traffic impact studies would be required for newer expanded campgrounds that require a zoning amendment or site plan control. Hydrogeological assessments to look at the effect on the water table and other drinking water systems would be required. Seasonal dates for campground operation. So we're proposing, following council sort of a revision from PAC, that campgrounds only be permitted to operate between May 1st and November 1st of any year. And then finally, that just making it clear that these additional studies that would be required would be triggered specifically by campgrounds that are looking to undertake a zoning bylaw amendment or site plan control application. So that's a twofold consideration. It's to recognize that some applications, such as minor variances, may be warranted that may not necessarily require a large scale of study. These are very expensive studies and they take a lot of time. And if a very minor proposal that doesn't necessarily warrant that level of study is proposed, a campground wouldn't be required to undertake that level of study. But it does recognize that proposals for zoning bylaw amendments would trigger that in particular, would trigger those types of studies. We also proposed a number of zoning bylaw amendments. Of these, all of the yard setbacks, for example, would be increased by 10 meters, where a tourist campground abuts or is adjacent to a sensitive use, such as a residential use or an agricultural. So instead of 10 meters, the setback would be 20. Instead of 15, it would be 25. Just recognizing that where a tourist campground is, if it's adjacent to another commercial use, then maybe an increased setback is not necessary, but where it's adjacent to people's homes, then a greater setback would be applied. Related to that, the second bullet on this slide here would require that landscaping, a 5-meter landscape strip, be incorporated into that additional setback, so that there has to be some sort of vegetated buffer that provides additional separation and buffering between the campground and the residential or agricultural use. So that doesn't necessarily have to be a planted hedge or something. It can be existing natural vegetation if it's sufficient. But it's intended to help contribute to land use compatibility between these types of land use. The zoning bylaw currently has a very broad range of exemptions for encroachments adjacent to the water. So if you have a cottage beside the water, there are a number of things that the zoning bylaw says you can put closer than 30 meters to the water. So a laundry list of items, including various types of decks, flagpoles, all these various facilities and structures. Campgrounds are much more intensive of a land use. There's a lot more people, there's a lot more structures, and a lot more activity. So recognizing that a campground is not the same as a residential use, that we're recommending and proposing that those encroachments would not apply to the tourist campground. So there would not be any encroachment permissions within the water setback that would apply to campgrounds. They would have to abide by the minimum 30-meter or more setback as it applies. There are policies in the official plan speaking to narrow channels, so water bodies where the width from shore to shore is less than 150 meters or 150 meters or less. But there aren't any provisions currently in the zoning bylaw that implement that. So one of the scope of the study is limited to tourist campgrounds. We can't propose changes that are beyond that. So we're proposing that tourist campgrounds specifically not be permitted to have marine facilities such as docks and so forth when they are on a narrow channel. So implementing that particular policy with the official plan. There are also certain definitions. There's one definition that's in the zoning bylaw that we propose to amend, I believe maybe two, as well as a number of other provisions that we would introduce or adjust. So That I'll have a little bit more detail on that on the next slide, on which definitions we're proposing to change and which ones we're proposing to add. Finally, one of the fundamental aspects of this process we've heard a lot about is campground density. The issues and options report speaks to our position and review of that particular consideration. There are many ways through zoning to regulate and deal with campground density, the density of campsites and so forth. It is our opinion that the appropriate mechanism for regulating density in Rideau Lakes, given the information that we have available, is by regulating the size of individual campsites. Because it will have the effect of limiting the density while accounting for site-specific conditions on every individual every individual camp. We proposed some dimensions for campsites for different trailer types in our issues and options report. The Planning Advisory Committee reviewed those and heard a lot of feedback from the community around those standards and tweaked the numbers, I should say. So the numbers that are presented here reflect the direction from Planning Advisory Committee. So what this means is that a park model trailer, which is obviously the largest type of trailer that you can have on a campground, would have a minimum site area of 304 square meters. And other trailer types, such as RVs or more traditional trailers, would have a minimum site size of 259 square meters. Campsites or tent campsites would continue to have a 60 square meter requirement. That's the current standard. So that's one of the more significant changes that's being proposed in the zoning amendments. I mentioned the definitions. I'm not going to read these all, but certainly they're there, and we can refer back to them if there's any specific language that there's any questions or concerns about. But we are proposing to change the definition for tourist campground. We would introduce a definition for a narrow channel that would align with the official plan. Define a planting strip, which is a vegetated strip that I was referencing earlier. Not a defined term in the zoning bylaw. We introduce a term and attach a performance standard to it, such as a setback or a dimension. You need to define that term, so that's why we're proposing to define a planting strip. And for that same reason, the zoning bylaw does not define or differentiate between different trailer types necessarily, so we would introduce these definitions for different trailer types. And you can see those here: a recreational vehicle, a travel trailer, and a park model trailer. So performance standards, the 259 square meter site area would apply to a recreational vehicle or a travel trailer. The 304 square meter minimum would apply to a park model. We've received directions for additional amendments to the zoning bylaw from the Municipal Services Committee. One of those is to refine the definition of lot coverage, specifically to reference park model trailers and to ensure that park model trailers would count towards lot coverage in case it's not clear in the current zoning bylaw. This is a provision that really provides clarity on the of the zoning bylaw for the public or staff, as well as to amend the provision around shoreline occupancy, which there are provisions in the zoning bylaw again that allow certain structures and facilities to be within a certain distance of the shoreline. And what this particular provision does is it increases that. Currently, if you have a residential, you can go up to 3 meters from the shoreline, and we would effectively be increasing that to 10. Again, recognizing that tourist campgrounds are more intensive use, creating a little bit more separation for the land, water bodies. I don't have a slide, but we are also proposing 3 amendments to the site plan control bylaw that I'll just speak to very briefly. One is the introduction of security. So what I mean by that is it's a fairly standard practice that site plan control bylaws. And I'll take a moment here. A site plan control bylaw, for anyone not familiar with what that means, is a tool under the Planning Act, under Section 41, that allows municipalities to undertake a detailed technical review for a proposed development, sort of between the zoning and building permit stage. Recognizing that there are limitations in other tools, such as the building code, that need to be filled. So, for example, a site plan control exercise allows a municipality to require more detailed technical study and for matters such as grading and regulating aspects of the site, paved surfaces, I mentioned grading, other site alterations, It culminates in a site plan and an agreement that's registered on title to a property that imposes recommendations from supporting studies. So the building code doesn't allow a municipality necessarily to regulate certain things. Site plan control fills that gap. And so there are 3 changes that we're proposing to the site plan control bylaw. One of those would allow the municipality to collect securities for a site plan control application. Fairly standard practice in any other municipalities, but not everywhere. And what the security in this context is effectively if a site plan control application culminates in requires that a number of changes occur to the site, grading, resurfacing, and so forth. The security allows the municipality to collect a certain amount of money from the applicant for changes that occur to the site, as well as changes that occur to public property. And that security is effectively used as a tool to ensure that the applicant complete the work. If they don't, the municipality would have some monies to be able to complete the work as required. It's generally not used by the municipality. Very unusual for municipalities to actually have to spend that money. It's more intended and more effectively used as an incentive for the applicant to actually complete the work and get their security back. That's generally how it's used. The second component is more of a technical amendment to the site plan control bylaw. The site plan control bylaw allows the addition of decks or additions that are up to 30 square meters in area. It's been the practice for a long time in the township that 30 square meters apply to individual trailer sites, not to an entirety of the campground. And this is effectively building that into the site plan control bylaw so that it's clear. It's a little unfair and a little silly to require an entire campground to go through a full site plan control exercise for a minor addition that's otherwise permitted in the zoning bylaw. It also creates, when I say it's unfair, it creates the situation where if you're the very first applicant on a campground to apply for a deck, use up the entirety of the 30 square meters for your deck, the next applicant is forced to trigger a site plan control bylaw process, which is very unfair for them. It's very onerous on the municipality to process those applications for very minor aspects, proposals such as decks and so forth. So that's the second amendment. And the third is more for clarity, and it's effectively there are incremental amendments, like incremental changes that are permitted to campgrounds. They're allowed to add 2 or 3 sites without triggering site plan control. And those are incremental permissions that are granted under the Planning Act on an annual basis. So campground can add a few sites each year, without having to go through a site plan control. And this last amendment would require that campgrounds that have undertaken those incremental changes reflect those changes on a future site plan control application should they choose to undertake a more substantial addition or expansion. That would be the default anyway. The municipality would require that as part of the site plan application regardless. So this is really providing clarity to both the public and applicants that this is the expectation. But it would be built into the site plan control bylaw so that the township also has the ability to require that of applicants, make that a mandatory component of a future application. So with that, I'll conclude by just noting that these amendments are the amendments to the zoning bylaw and the official plan are, in our opinion, consistent with the provincial policy statement, as well as the official plans of the United Counties of Grenville, as well as the strategic direction of the township's own official plan. They are, in our opinion, good land use planning, and they respond to the issues that we've identified and heard from the community over the course of this land use. And with that, I thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome any questions or comments.
Is everybody still awake? Everybody understand everything you said? It's okay, there's not going to be a test before you. So now I'd like to invite everybody to start thinking about what comments they'd like to make, any questions they'd like to ask. Possibly line up at the podium. You can give your name, and everyone could listen quietly without interrupting the speaker. And I have the liberty of one. Very unlikely to happen. And questions dealing with presentation that you've seen, I won't even try to answer through the Fotenn. We'll get their information at this point to have a better understanding. So do we have any volunteers? Councilor Fotenn, please.
Good evening, everyone. Marty Jones, owner of Otter Lake Park, Highway 15. Been there 70 years. I have like 4 generations in that park. My grandparents' friends, my parents' friends, my friends, his friends. And the only question I have is, I don't want to make any changes to my park. Is the way it's set up now, it has been for that long. If anything, I've got rid of my motel there and cleaned that mess up. And I got rid of a few sites, new trailers, little bigger trailers. And is it grandfathered? Those sites grandfathered, or am I going to change? That's the only question I have.
Through you, Mr. Chair. When a zoning bylaw amendment of this nature is by council, anything that exists and is permitted, say permits or what have you, at the time of passing of the zoning bylaw, so anything that complies with the current zoning or is already legal non-conforming remains legal non-conforming, which is the planner word for grandfather. So if there are no if everything on the site today complies with zoning or is otherwise grandfathered through previous zoning bylaw changes, it would continue to be grandfathered in. I can't speak to the particulars of your individual campground, but that's the general principle that applies.
Okay, so let me put it differently. My trailers aren't going to fit that program that you have there for sizing and spacing. So am I made to change that, or is it?
And through Mr. Chair, no. Short answer is no. For existing sites, for what's there today, no. Owners of campgrounds won't be required to change their campgrounds to fit. The way the bylaw is currently drafted, and I believe this is an amendment that we'll have to adjust and we'll have to incorporate. The conversion of existing campsites to have trailers or park model trailers would be affected by this bylaw. So if a campground owner has, let's say, 30 sites that have RVs, and they want to change one to have a park model or 3 to have a park model, they would have to comply with the new zoning bylaw.
Okay, and that's on the whole park. Would that be on the whole park or just one site?
Mr. Chair, it would be for each individual site.
Okay. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Mayor, first we start with the President. I have a few questions. Under a municipal act of mayor, always most of the campground as far as I know. Seems to me that this, when I see the lake is not coming from the camp, I'm putting that up. Recommendation number 3 on the zoning bylaw amendments. Prohibit certain water and equipment exceptions. If I'm reading this right, does that mean that somebody in a cottage can enjoy their people watching the sunset, but somebody in the campground can't? So what benefit dozens of people? Is the way to understand?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. I'm not sure if the gazebo is on the list, but there are certain facilities that are on the list that would be permitted to residential use tonight.
So basically, we're saying that they have a cottage and have certain encroachment, but for hundreds of people in the campground, that's not allowed. We benefit from the same encroachment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, based on the proposed the campground, that would
And that's discriminatory. Under licensing bylaw, those are ways to set up a mechanism to ensure that we need more
Pardon?
can't hear.
Volume, please. I think that's correct.
under municipal act recommendation, under licensing, provides the ability for the campground mechanism to ensure that bylaws are adhered to. What's the mechanism now for bylaws to be adhered to for cottages? They're not the same as campground. PRL can come on my side. Why do we need a license? What does the license change?
I think there's a number of comments that we've asked that other enforcement inspections not necessarily following their own inspection schedule. And we received comments of certain circumstances that's legitimate. You call the ministry supposed to X years, they don't. What we would like to know from the campground is if those agencies are doing their job. If they're not doing their job, then we can try and push them. That's a benefit. And it's a benefit to the town. Whether it's a benefit to the ministry, claims of staff, and whatever that's.
That's questions with regard to Z241. So I can purchase a fifth wheel for $150,000 under 530 square feet. I can purchase a cottage with the same square footage for $100,000. But yet, the fifth wheel is not taxed, but you want to tax the cottage. Won't have a 50 amp hour. Won't have a toilet. Sink and a toilet and a bathroom. So I don't understand the concept of the fifth wheel, same size as the cottages with the same amenities, being charged a tax. The cottages will not go through.
I think taxation is totally separate subject that the municipality doesn't really control. And however, we have the approaches and tax guide, but that is totally up.
Thank you very much.
Impatient?
Would it be better if this was turned a little bit?
Sure.
That way everybody can.
Yeah. That's an example of the type of comments that we hear.
We're good.
Okay. We gotta get you on the camera.
Perfect. Is that better? I know it's hard to hear when everybody's talking the wrong way. So my name's Duncan Pickard, and I'm a resident. I've been here for 20 years. I happen to live on Hudson Bay, the Big Rideau Lake. And I've been following this through its 18-odd months. Overall, the process of ensuring the official plan and bylaws as they relate to tourist campgrounds has been a rewarding experience, with many regulations being improved and clarified. Unfortunately, one of the main concerns raised by citizens has been and continues to be ignored. This is the issue of density of campsites within either a campground or a geographic area. They relate to each other. It is easy to understand why the planners have recommended a plan which relies heavily on environmental studies. In fact, if this was not the case, I think we would all be up in arms that protecting the environment should be the minimum hurdle for the approval of any development. This is especially true in an area such as ours, which depends heavily on tourists for its growth. If we negatively impact the environment, over time, the tourists will take their business elsewhere. It's good for none of us. What is less easily to understand is why the leaders, councils, are willing to limit their input on how the township will grow and the image that they will have available to market to the world. I am told there is a broad ability for council to adjust proposals for expansion based on compatibility. But without a trigger, hard to see how a citizen or a council member would be in a position to raise the issue and defy the studies. The fact is that a 50-acre campground that can have 23 acres of developable land, and by that I mean one that is net of setbacks, net of infrastructure, including roads, net of common area, can support 13 times 23 acres, 300 park model campsites, or 6 campsites for total acreage, as long as the environmental studies say the land will support it. The number of sites and the resultant population could be higher if all the sites were travel trailers, because they don't have this minimum, the same minimum site that is here. Now, of all the rumored expansions that I've heard of, none of them come anywhere close to applying for this type of density. So why would you accept and you recommend bylaws which would permit not only the campgrounds to go to that size, but for them to encourage them to reevaluate their business plans to put more campsites on it? Imagine the population boom if all 11 of the campgrounds greater than 20 acres in Rideau Lake Township increased from the township's estimated 1.99 2 sites per acre to 6 sites per acre. This could represent an increase of 2,300 sites or 6,900 people, allowing for 3 people per site. And yes, all of those trailers become permanent fixtures of this rural landscape. It is reasonable to have an absolute density cap based on the historic method of a defined number of sites per acre. Such a cap allows for reasonable growth, but still raises a red flag for citizens, councillors, and staff if the proposed growth of any given project is greater than the determined number. Under such a scenario, council still has the flexibility to discuss and create variances if the individual circumstances warrant it. Please add such a density cap to the proposed bylaw. That's myself and my wife, Jane. I would ask one other question that came up during the presentation. At one point, it was very easy to see that peer reviews were encouraged on these studies. I have to say, in the final draft, I cannot find where peer reviews of these studies are encouraged or permitted. And I think they should be encouraged, and the applicant, I hate to say, should pay for it, and the township should select who the peer review is done by. Anyway, that's my thought.
Good evening. My name is Bill Broadley. I'm an owner and have lived in this township for 20 years. I've also been a camper on a permanent site in this campground for over 35 years and camped in campgrounds for 10 years before that. I see the other side, and I understand fully what this gentleman just talked about, but I see the other side of the argument. I'm the type of person that looked for months and years to try to buy property along the water. It's not there, and most people can't afford it. My trailer is my cottage, and therefore I should have the same kind of rights and the same kind of feelings of being a part of this township and being a part of what's going on as well as a taxpayer. I live around the corner from our mayor, so that's the end of the township that I belong to. We discussed about visiting. He never comes to my house. We meet at the mailbox. We've had a couple discussions. But my point is this, is that the campgrounds have been around. I've been camped in at least 7 or 8 different campgrounds in this township over the years. And I found the one that I'm in now the most that I've enjoyed, and I've been there for 35 years. And that's my cottage. That's my place. That's my summer home. I understand people who have property on the water. I'm an accountant. I just retired after 47 years in business, and I have a number of clients who live on the water. So I know exactly what the dollars are. I know what we're talking about. My main concern is this, is that this proposal and everything that's happening is going to push us through into an election. Are we going to have some answers and some numbers settled before election time? Or does this become an election issue and we're back here again in another 6 months or a year? Let's get this thing finished, okay? Let's decide what we're doing, how we're doing it, and get it done with, so that we can go on and live with our lives and know. We're sitting in a campground right now that we don't know what's going on. We don't know what our fees next year are going to be because we don't know where we're at or what the costs are going to be. You know, I've heard all kinds of stories about what's happening on the water and this is happening and that's happening. I spent 3 days last week going from here to Jones Falls and back with my boat. The people on the water are very friendly. We're a good area, and we're a great tourist area. That's where our money comes from, is tourism. And all this is doing is putting it all in a standstill. Let's move on. Let's get it done. Thank you.
I'd just like to comment. Thank you for raising that. Further on in the agenda, I was going to lay out the agenda schedule, and we're going to be discussing comments in the next planning advisory and any other comments. At that point, we're hoping that the advisory committee will make a recommendation to council that will come to council at its October 4th. So our target is so everybody knows where they stand. Everybody knows what they should be doing, what they could be doing, and let's just get on with it. Everybody go back for next summer. Totally enjoyable.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Elgin. My name is Rebecca Cabral, and I'm the Public Affairs and Communications Officer for Camping in Ontario. We are a not-for-profit association that represents almost 400 privately and municipally owned seasonal campgrounds. This includes 66,000 campsites, millions of campers, and small business owners. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the 16 campgrounds located in the Township of the Lake. In working with these small business owners for the last several months, we are concerned over the lack of facts and understanding of our industry, and that these false assumptions will lead to decisions that could potentially see the end of our industry within this township. We are calling on council members to listen to the concerns of not just cottage owners, but these small business owners who give so much back to the community they love and have resided in for decades. Listening to the thoughts and feelings of individual community members should not be the basis when creating town policies. Only true facts and data will ensure that the decisions made by the council regarding this issue are beneficial for all. With that in mind, today I want to talk about facts. Facts. Campgrounds are economic drivers for the Rideau Lakes Township. In April of this year, Camping in Ontario provided the council with a detailed report regarding the positive impacts of campgrounds in the township. The hard work of these individual businesses trickles into all other parts of this township, in the local gas stations, in shops, to their taxes that go directly back into the municipality, which is used for local services. Fact. The lakes in this township are owned by either the Government of Canada or Ontario and are promoted for public use. It saddens me that there's some rhetoric that is used by some residents that suggests the lakes are for private use by cottage owners. People come from all over to take in the beauty and enjoy the lakes. From public boat launches to public parks, people come by the millions to bask in Ontario's natural beauty. Campgrounds serve as an integral part in providing accommodation to those that do not have the means of purchasing a multi-million-dollar cottage. By eliminating or limiting the number of people that can stay at these parks will not deter the number of people coming to this area. Instead, there will be people who decide to boondock, meaning that they'll park in public parking lots, on the side of the roads, or choose to camp by the waterfront. Fact: these campgrounds have been around for decades, with some being multi-generational owners. Regardless of the campground's ownership structure, be it municipal, corporate, incorporated, or sole proprietor, a campground is a campground and are operated in a similar manner. Some of these family-run businesses have been here for more than 50 years. The major component of their business is to preserve the land in which they're situated. To destroy nature's beauty will result in a significant loss of revenue, and honestly, is just bad for business. That is why all the campgrounds have or are in the process of renewing their septic systems as instructed by the Ministry of Environment. This industry is far more regulated than any private dwelling, and as a reminder, these are not just single septic tanks being installed. These are sewage treatment plants which accommodate higher density. Thus, these systems cost a lot of time and money to install. The long wait times is not as a result of insufficient due diligence, but rather a result of a backlog in the ministry staff. Above all else, we recommend that Council implement a grandfather clause to protect businesses that are so valuable to this township. We recognize that this is a difficult issue for the township, and you may not have all the tools for implementing bylaws or licensing agreements specific to campgrounds. Camping in Ontario has the knowledge, expertise, and decades of experience to help those in power make decisions that would benefit the community in addition to campgrounds. We recommend that the township join in coalition with our organization, campground owners, and community members to work towards a reasonable, fact-based solution. We believe that together we can create a bylaw that will satisfy the concerns of all without hurting the businesses and campgrounds in this community. Having toured all the campgrounds myself in this township, you should be very proud of each and every owner for their hard work and dedication into creating premier vacation destinations, and it would be a shame to see them further shut down due to congestion. Thank you.
Duncan, wait to get to the second round, please. And give everybody else a chance. Anybody else volunteering to come up? Paula? Oh, sorry. Paula first. Sir. Oh, okay. We'll go second, Paula.
Okay, I'm a little surprised what's going on here. I'm hearing all of those campgrounds that feel threatened. And people that, Ross Davey, sorry, Ross Davey. There's been quite a bit going on the last 18 months, and most of what's been going on is just the opposition to rapid expansion. I don't see where anybody in the last 18 months has endangered any of the existing campgrounds or anything like that. So I don't understand where this is coming from. Our point of view, and let's get the elephant in the room, it's the waterways doubling.
Thank you.
This other stuff is all nonsense. The waterways, a corporate hedge fund / whatever, walks in here and wants to do something that no other campground has been allowed to do. And that's what we're against, okay? I mean, there was page 5 on that slide was an interesting page, which you glossed over very quickly. Had about 25 issues that come from these campgrounds. Noise, water pollution, the whole bit. And if you put that slide back up, those are all the issues that we're concerned about. Now, what's going on last 18 months is a lot of emails were sent to council asking for reasons why you would allow expansion of waterways potentially to double. Not once to begin next. You're only asking for reasons what was beneficial to the township. We never got an answer. Finally, with a little bit of pressure, we got an answer from the mayor. But it wasn't an answer, okay? It was just an acknowledgement that we wanted to know, but there was no answer, okay? There's no economic reason that I can think of. With all due respect, I don't believe there's much economic benefit from people that come up here on a Friday with their car gas up at Costco, with all their groceries from Costco.
Ignorant.
Well,
Excuse me. Could you let him please finish?
I believe for the most part, they come up here, they're here for 3 days, they go back. I'd love to see somebody do a study on the economic spin-offs. I believe that they're moderate at best, okay? No, I'm not, but we're not, but listen, we're not.
Okay, calm
Again,
down, everybody.
again, we're not, nobody is endangering the existing campsites. We're just asking for controlled growth, if any. But I don't see why. We're already one of the densest populated areas for campgrounds, and now we want to increase it. I don't get it. It flies in the face of all recent trends towards environmental concerns. It doesn't make any sense at all. And, you know, I understand that you don't want to talk about taxes, but, you know, it's 150 sites, and I understand the last time I saw the tax, it was $9,200. That's $60 a site. That's 1% of what I pay, and I'm 500 yards away. And you get all the same benefits. You use the same roads, the same services, the same ambulances, the same police, everything. And you pay nothing. So at least, if I could at least agree, if you were giving a tax base that was proper for that use of that campground, I mean, how many acres, and you only get $9,200 in taxes? I pay $6,000, over $6,000. And you've got the same use of the lake, everything. It absolutely makes no sense. I understand that that's an impact issue, but I don't think you should be allowing expansion until you see revenue that justifies it. And you don't have any revenue. It floors me. And again, none of the residents on this lake that I know of are concerned about existing campsites. I think they're fine. We all live in harmony. It's just the rapid expansion we're worried about. And that's all we've ever been worried about for the last 18 months. And waterways in particular is the one. So the rest of you, we're fine. We live in harmony and it's great. I don't mind looking over Rideau back. I love your fireworks. It's great. It's not a problem. But let's just watch how we overcrowd this whole thing. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paula, and that's my husband. And I understand neighbors kind of fighting with neighbors because we actually are on different teams on this. So it's very stressful. I am a camping girl. I grew up camping at Lower Beverly. I call it Delta Park. Since I was a friggin' kid. My 12 siblings and I camped there. Campgrounds are very close to my heart. I get a little pissed off when people get their fingers in it. Especially when Delta Park is owned by the Township. I get a little nervous when I see people running for council that have talked about selling Delta Park in the past. I don't like that. It's a very controversial subject, and I wish it had been handled differently. I think waterways, the council didn't know how to handle it, so they threw everybody in the shit pile with them, basically. So my point of view is, I don't know who said it, that gentleman. I think most of campgrounds in this township are fine. I actually tried to find a seasonal, and I can't find one. I had one campground tell me I can give them $800, go on a waiting list, and if I get a campsite within the next 2 to 3 years, I can get that money back, or if I change my mind, I can get the money back and go somewhere else. Then I had someone actually tell me I couldn't have a campsite there because of my husband's opinion. So, I don't know what happens in your house, but I got my own opinion. So I'm just here to say, with the election coming up, I agree with whoever said we need to decide this now. They've pit neighbor against neighbor for long enough. We need a representative from the campground, a representative from the cottage owners to talk neighborly and figure this out. And we need to get it resolved. And we need to know anybody that's running for election, what their stand is on Delta Park, so it doesn't end up like a Portland fire hall and it just goes poof in the middle of the night. That's my point.
Wondering why I came in shorts. I don't have pants.
I'd just like to know who's got the car keys. Paula, are you driving at home? thank you very much, Paula. Anybody else like to come up?
I don't have anything prepared. Can you hear me with this mask on?
Just breathe on Jeff.
I'll take it off because I'm awful good looking. Hey. Oh, there we go. Didn't put my hearing aids on.
Take a picture first, Steve, before you put it back.
Yeah. I'm one of the so-called cottagers. Oh, Gil Della. Sorry. I thought everybody knew me. Oh, that's my hearing aid that I'm hearing. I thought I was speaking up. I'm a cottage owner, proud cottage owner, and I don't have an expensive property. I've got a real cottage with plywood floors. I bought the lot many years ago with a lot of sweat equity in it. For a lot of my friends were traveling and seeing Europe and everything else, I put a few dollars aside to have the cottage stream. I'm a local. I grew up in Smiths Falls. I won't say that everywhere, but I'll say it here.
That's not local. That's not local.
Oh, yes, it is. I spent a lot of time up there. And so, anyway, we have this cottage. It's not opulent by a long stretch. We really sacrifice to get it. We work on it every day. And we're really interested in preserving our environment, the environment, everybody's environment, for future generations. Well, I'm not going to see a lot more sunsets, but I hope my kids do, and my grandkids. So that's why the environment's so important. And the elephant in the room is the environment. And thank you for mentioning that, Mr. Davies. I've heard you mention the environment a little bit. The township, not at all, really, anything. And that is the real bugbear for me, that we haven't heard very much on that. Now, I'm in the shallow end on Hudson's Bay, and I've owned the property for 22 years. When I first purchased here, I did a lot of work on the property before we built, and I noticed that we didn't have any algae blooms. I didn't see an algae bloom. I didn't even know what it was. I had to look it up or find out what it was. And as time went on, a few years went by, and we started seeing the wind blows my way. Started seeing cut weeds coming in, and I thought, where is this coming from? It's coming from out in the bay, Hudson's Bay. And I didn't put it together. I was pretty naive. I thought, hey, these are weeds and water. But no, it was becoming what I consider somewhat objectionable. And that's why the environment's so important, because I see pollution happening every year more and more and more. And I'm an expert, environmental expert, because I've been watching this same water for 22 years. And it is degrading. And if we file more people into, I'm not against increasing the amount of campsites in on the lakes. I just think you have to spread it, not stick it right in one area. Why aren't there more campgrounds in other areas on the lake? Fishing birds, where it's shallow. That's very, very, very problematic. Very problematic. And then I'll go back to my also experience. I've written all this to council. But when I was younger, when my family was younger, we had a little tent trailer, not much, and we wanted to go camping. And we really enjoyed it. I have lots of good memories, lots of stories of camping. And they were true tourist camping. They weren't bark model trailers, which I consider cottages. They were like tent trailers, pull-behind trailers. Once we rented the motorhome, and that was really, and the memories still exist. But when I was that age, I couldn't afford $150,000 or $200,000 trailer and $4,000 or $5,000 a month to go camping to have that experience. So this gentleman mentioned that he's been going for 35 years to the campground. I understand that. That would be hard to let go of it. You're not going to have to let go of it because you're in an existing campground. Nothing will change it. But you are having a seasonal traditional campground are reducing the amount of sites for people that are true tourists that want to go through and see your wonderful township, come back maybe in years, maybe even settle here. You know, who knows? But I guarantee that someone in a large trailer on a rented lot going to load up before they show up. Like you were saying, at probably Costco or something like that. They'll fill their car with gas. I just got it for $7 at Costco. And where is the game? We've heard all kinds of talk about the benefits of campgrounds, how spin-offs and all that. But we haven't seen, I haven't seen, maybe it's real figures on the benefits. I think the people that are transient tourists, they're the ones that are more likely not to have anything with them. They don't have room for anything, so they have to buy everything when they go. But if I've got this large truck, and I load her up before I come, coolers and all, I might fly here. That'd be about it. So that is my campground experience and how you're reducing tourist campground sites for tourists. I mean, going to have tourists, you're going to have people like me. Tell me the difference between somebody in a big trailer and being in a small cottage on a lake. Other than the fact that maybe I had a sacrifice of it to get that done. And just, Eric, when you were running council, or for mayor, I remember you came by and visited me. You know, some of the earlier days when I was, we didn't build a cottage in London. I had a lot. But you came
louder.
Yeah.
I think everybody would like to hear your comments.
I should take my hearing aids.
I have mine in and I can barely hear you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, if anybody has problems or like me, but you came to visit me in the school. And 4 years. Pardon? 4 years. Yes. And I remember, I think it was like a fall or late summer day or something like that. And I'm down a little road, hard to find, and I was probably by myself, probably had my trusty dog. And you really impressed me. You said, you're very proud of, we're going to push for more septic inspections. Sorry, I guess I wasn't speaking loud now. We're going to push for more septic inspections, and you were really pro the environment, and I love that. And I said to my wife, hey, this is what we want. We haven't seen this before. And yet, I haven't heard a lot from you on the environment. And that's worries me. And also, well, we have pushed many details here. And I haven't had constant. I did 40 the cruise campgrounds. I've actually, there was another time, many suggestions.
Those of you that have seen the email, we have gotten every mail, every email, and every member of council received them and read them. If we were to respond to each and every email, each one of us, we wouldn't have time to read the next batch. So just let me finish. Every email that has come in, every point that has been raised from campgrounds and from cottages has been reviewed by the members of the committee and has been discussed in open meeting. Nothing has been ignored. The reason we're here right now is to get the additional comments so that we get to our next meeting, we can have a final discussion and we can decide what we're going forward with. Now, there will be a lot of comments, a lot of suggestions, good ideas that have been made that we will likely not be going forward with. We're going to go forward with what this committee is the most appropriate item to go with at this point in time. And that's basically what we're going to recommend.
What I think happened here He's gone very, very light on the environment from my perspective. And I think many others. Anybody else feel that way?
Okay.
They've gone light on the environment?
I think, Bill, I'm going to cut you off short. Time reason. But the environment is the factor. You've watched our meetings, and if you watched what we discussed, listen to the environment is one word that comes to protection of the environment. So I think I'd like you to wrap up, and we'll give the opportunity for somebody else to speak.
One quick more comment from there. At the time when you came to visit me in the fall, before
This should not be a debate. I will speak once the public.
Yeah, we're not debating this. This is simply for us to see.
Okay.
But the debate that may go on will be at the planning advisory committee meeting, and it will be by the committee members.
What I was going to mention,
One last comment.
he also said, you recall, that, and I found it odd, that waterfront residents pay roughly, I don't remember the exact number, but in the 70% range of taxes. And basically, we were important to the township. So I hope that is still the case. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for taking so much time. Sorry I'm quiet. And that's it.
Okay, and then we'll have the lady in the back who's waiting patiently.
Yeah. My name is Greg Pearson, retired member of the Canadian Forces.
Can you speak up, please, Greg? Speak up, please.
I'm not loud enough? Okay. My name is Greg Pearson. I'm a retired member of the Canadian Forces. I've lived all over the country. I've camped all over the country. As a result, I never bought any places all over the country. I didn't know where I was going to retire until my kids decided that for me, because they got too old and they decided they're living in the Ottawa area and they're not moving, and so that's where I live. I'm a seasonal camper, like a lot of my friends at the campground that I camp at. I spent a lot of money in this township. I moved here on the 1st of May, and I leave here at Thanksgiving. And I shop at local grocery stores, and I buy my gas in local gas stations, and my propane in local propane outlets. We spend all our money here. We vote here. We're citizens here. We feel like we're citizens of this township. We spend so much time. And I think it's a disservice to say the seasonal campers are buying all their supplies in Ottawa and trucking it down here. They're not.
I can say 90% of my camp, the people stay for the summer. They spend here in Ottawa.
Let's let Greg go on.
Exactly. I'm a member of the local golf course. A whole bunch of the campers at our campsite are members there. A significant number that if they withdrew, I can tell you right now, the golf course would feel the economic impact. The grocery store we shop at would feel the economic impact. The Esso station in Westport would feel the economic impact. So we think we belong here, we've earned the right to be here, and we feel like we're citizens here. We love this place. We love our campground. And I just think it's important to know that. Thank you.
I'd just like to remind everybody here, we're hearing people speaking on behalf of cottage residents, and we're hearing people extolling the virtues of campground. What we want is comments on the proposed changes we're making. So this isn't an issue of one versus the other. It's an issue that we have received a ton of input. And we're still getting some. And we're identifying changes that we feel should be made for the benefit of the township, including the environment, and hopefully including the economic benefit of the township. So we need those types of comments also. Now, I respect campgrounds. I've camped in campgrounds, and I'm a resident here. And for the 35 years that I was living in a suburb of Ottawa called Barhaven, I sought my refuge here, only to find out that my former counselor is at a campground.
And that's me. Listen, I'm here. My name is Jan Harder. I am his former counselor. And until November 14th of this year, I will be a 25-year counselor of the City of Ottawa. I chaired planning for many years. I can tell you that your council has hired a very good company to take on this very difficult work that's so important to this area that we all love. It doesn't matter who you are in the room. You love this place. So you wouldn't be coming back. You would have sold your cottage. You wouldn't be investing in it. You wouldn't be looking forward to your kids, your grandchildren coming here. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I rented a cottage on McBride, up in Sunnyside. My husband and I have been coming here for 17 years. We're like newbies. Jan has been coming to Sunnyside for 37 years. We have people that have been coming here for a lot longer than that. And you know what, that place, back in the 90s, the early 90s, when the Nortel thing happened, etc., the Northern Telecom, and Chris and Dave decided to buy it, it was a dump. You could have really complained. But what's happened over the years in campgrounds around here, because there's so much pride in what you do with your place, all of you, is that the investments that have been made on an annual basis are so tangible that we take pride in it. We even take pride in our space, but we take pride in this place, in Rideau Lakes. And whether it is the fact of how much money that we spend here, we spend at the campsite because they provide a lot of services for us there. But we spend, whether my husband and I love going to Delta, love it. So when you're talking about the campsite there, I'm going like, oh, I get you what you're saying. And that bake shop there is awesome. And we like to go to Fort Bar and we get cheap. I can go on and on and on about a place where we all enjoy. For us, it's just their summers. If you're really lucky and you can come year round to your cottages, that's fantastic. As to the environment, who was the gentleman talking about the environment? You're not going to get a stronger environmental body than the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority with all the powers that they have. And they have their rules define what we can do. Kevin, who is one of the owners of our campsite at Sunnyside, is a forester. They invest in all kinds of environmental initiatives on an annual basis. They build trails. I mean, I'm sure, and I don't know for sure, I shouldn't, but I'm confident because of the support that various people have stood up and talked about, that across Rideau Lakes, you're seeing that kind of investment. You have a right to be concerned about what you're concerned about. You're talking about a massive growth. I don't blame you. You have a right to be concerned that we're very close to an election, 2 months from yesterday. Yeah. But you've got a bunch of people that are sitting here before you and have been for 2 years now, isn't it almost 2 years? Well, I don't mean that, but I mean on this topic with Fotenn, and I think that you are in the short strokes now, and I think there's a deal to be made. And I think what you should do is you should take a very small group of people representing owners, representing campers, representing obviously your council, and the cottagers, and try to make those cottagers from each of the areas and have that discussion, because you can come up with a solution. Don't leave it to somebody else to make the decision, because that's where, before I came here today, that's where I thought this was going. No matter what decision you made, no matter how hard you tried, somebody would be appealing it. Either the people that have the campgrounds would appeal it, or the cottagers would appeal it, or somebody would appeal it. Maybe an environmentalist would appeal it. And then it would go to some body that would make up your minds for you, and you wouldn't have the say. You've got the time, it's a little bit of time, but you have the time to have the right people that you can support, come together, sit down, or work with Fotenn for questions. You have enough of them. They've done their job. Now it's your job. Work as a team and make that happen. And we'll all be the better for it. Thank you.
by the way, just to keep the record clear, I live next door to Sunnyside and I have waterfront.
My name is Tom Kohler. We're residents in Clear Lakes. We have a property immediately adjacent to waterways. So we're really loaded into this particular topic. And I'm quite environmental, so glad some people brought that up. It is a big issue. I've watched the lake degrade ever since my family has been on the lake since the mid-60s. And we have a little cottage with 100 feet on the water. And I want everybody to know that from the residents' perspective, this is not a big issue. We don't mind what's going on in the campground. The whole thing has to do with density. And I don't think that people have grasped that. What Fotenn's, one of the slides in here, had recommended for the park model trailer, which is a big concern, Bill, of a lot size of 10 meters by 30 meters. I think coming out to about 304 square meters. That's 90 feet, give or take, by 30 feet, give or take. And if you have an acre of land, you all know what a lot looks like, an acre on the side road where somebody's got a house or something, not a very big piece of land, you can put 21 of those suffers in their land. You know, that's, if you sort of put them in like parking slots. Like you need roads and stuff, so I'm going to take it down, you got 14, 15 of those possibilities. That's a density issue. Now, nobody's saying that any of the campgrounds want to do that. But the thing is, when you write a set of rules like that, guidelines like that, that's the possibility. And if all of the other criteria are met, that's what you get. And that blows the density right through the ceiling and causes huge long-term environmental issues. And if you're not going to sit back and say, you have an acre of land, we can only have this few lots on it, you're going to run into that long-term problem. And nobody wants to deal with something far down the road. They want to get gratification, they want to get on with the job and not worry about what's going to happen. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to have water issues. We're going to worry about contamination of lakes. We're going to have problems on the waterfront with erosion of the sides from wakes and boats and activity. And it's just a numbers thing. Too many people in too small an area causes you huge. And so far what I've read from this report, although it's concise and everything it is, they've missed the boat. You guys have missed the boat. I'm sorry. You need smaller numbers. You need a bigger lot size by far. And what you've done with this is you've set it aside and you said, well, if we allow the size for a park model trailer, that's okay, but you haven't thought how big it's going to take in the area. Too many people. And it's not NIMBY. I saw articles in the newspaper from Southern Ontario and there's a bunch of rich groups up there on the big Rideau system that don't want anybody coming up and intruding on their privacy. Nothing is further from the truth. That's not what it's all about at all. And it drives me crazy when I read that. We've had waterways has been beside our property forever. Not too many. I mean, there's always issues with people. Local people who live here and aren't campers cause problems. Campers cause problems too. It's not. You can't say who you figure that. So get your numbers better. Those are not good numbers. I want you to know that. I disagree with 100%, and I hope you have the fortitude on this council and this PAC to get that changed because it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Thanks.
My name is Grant Wesley. I'm the president of Big Rideau. I have to say, campgrounds coexisted with private waterfront property owners for years. I don't think that's the issue here. Seems that often it's characterized as somebody said, a bunch of wealthy guys with big properties, Big Rideau, not wanting campgrounds. Campgrounds are and have been for a long time coexisted with property, and I don't think property owners have a problem with campgrounds
The economics issue can be debated ad infinitum. I think if there is an issue, it's the fact that there's not an equivalent or a representative tax amount paid by the properties that exist, or the campsite owners that exist on a per trailer basis. To me, the issue is about the future, and I think that people have alluded to that. Population, you can talk about all kinds of density in terms of lot size, etc., but it really comes down to an issue of population. And the more population you have in an area like this that is all serviced by septic, the more effluent you're going to get, and the more impact on waterways. Rideau waterways, lakes, streams, rivers. We're seeing those changes now. You see early blooms of algae. There are reports of more blue-green algae, which is toxic. And I think that I have to correct the woman who represented the Campground Association. Campground do not operate sewage treatment plants. They have septic systems. And the more population you have, the more effluent you have, and that effluent carries contaminants and nutrients into lakes that fire more algae blooms and more aquatic growth. And if our lakes all turn green with algae and lots of growth, that's going to reduce tourism, boaters, fishermen, etc. So to me, the issue is population density, and you can't control that other than with some kind of metric on, be it lot coverage, be it trailers per acre, whatever it is, you need some sort of metric vis-a-vis density, because that basically is going to drive and regulate the amount of population you have. And just go down to Manatee and see the dense development along the river there and the quality of the water there. It's all people operating on septic systems, and the water quality is terrible. I can remember as a kid swimming in the Rideau down there. I wouldn't step foot in it now. And so we have to think about the future and population density in an area where we have a vulnerable aquifer and everybody's serviced on septic systems. I think that we've offered in writing a variety of comments, and I think one of the most important is the fact that you come up with some kind of density metric. Brittany has offered a density metric for the existing campgrounds. Hey, they're grandfathered. They are what they are. We're talking about future expansion and development and a metric that controls overall population. You can read all my other comments that were submitted. We like a lot of what was in your report, but we think, as somebody else pointed out, that if there's a hole in the report, it has to do with density. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Brian from Basswood Campground. So I hear everybody talking. We did do a development 3 years ago with the township, and to hear everybody saying all the septic and that was one of the major things before any of this. That was a huge thing with the township. We did have a water treatment system that was part of our approval, which was, going to take our water quality, not for just the sites we're doing, all the sites we had as well. So it was going to, fix all the water quality problems from, future trailers or issues we have with septics, and it was a water to biofilter system, inspected every single year. It costs a lot of money to have it inspected. I don't think there's a cottage on the water that has their septic system checked every single year for what's going on. So this would be really And they guarantee the water coming out is drinkable at the end. So, you know, it was $500,000 to put the system in that they want for us. But they guaranteed it, inspected every single year. It's going to be almost $10,000 for the inspection to do it. And I don't think there's a cottage out there that anybody does that every single year. So saying that you're going to take the water quality down in a development is not 100% accurate. We worked with Rideau Valley Conservation. They wanted a part of our shoreline for plantation, all that kind of stuff. They were great. That was part of it. Like, so a lot of the stuff you guys are bringing up prior to any of this, Rideau Lakes already had this in place. I couldn't believe how much the testing for the water in the ground, all that stuff. There was so many studies we had to do, the lake study, all that. And we did a lot of it just to get to where we were. We found out at the end that it was never going to be worth to get to the standards they wanted. We couldn't put the sites in and ever redeem our money back. So when these guys are going to do development, the stuff they have to put in and put forward is never, it's so far beyond. It's not at your conventional septic bed. And, you know, that's what these existing campgrounds have now. Yes, 100%. That's not what's happening moving forward. The ministry is not allowing that stuff to happen. So it was, I'm telling you, we shut it down. We have the approval still today with Rideau Lakes Township, but it's not viable. But I guarantee you it changes the water quality later. And maybe lots of you might not know that, but if they're going to spend the money, and I don't know what they have, conventional septic now or however it is now, when they're done, it will be a treatment plant put in place, because that's what we had to do for 30 sites, and it was $500,000. So it's not, this isn't something that the township says just put a small bed in and move on. It's very serious to do the development. So the unfortunate thing, these guys, it's like anything. You want a subdivision, you want it in your backyard, you want a high rise, nobody wants that. But it falls within the standards of what they're allowed to do with their property, and it is their property, and if they meet all the criteria, the township's in a hard spot of what they can allow and not allow. But there is some benefits to it. I understand that, you know, you guys think it's going to kill everything, but in today's standards, they're not allowing this stuff to happen. Like, it's way beyond that. So that's my opinion anyways. And I see the site trailer thing, like I do see where they're talking about sites, you know, piled on top of each other. We don't have that in ours. We probably have an acre per site, but I see that where they're standing on top of each other, and so some of that's going to have to change. But these have been around, and this is a business, and everybody wants to, you know, grow a little bit and move. But I think that from the environment part, just to assure you guys, this stuff's already all been in place, and the township was, you know, prior to any of this isn't something they just said, yeah, go ahead. It was you, Gary, you guys were involved when we went through all this. And, you know, and it was Malcolm at the time, and the stuff we went through, and, you know, and at the end, it was just not feasible. It wasn't worth it. Like, you know, the roads, like, we needed two-way roads. We had to meet subdivision standards, and it doesn't grandfather any of that in. I understand everything we have now is grandfathered, but, like, we were putting roads in that were 44 feet wide or something for two-lane traffic. The light, like, they spec'd all the light standards. You know, it was way more than all the water runoff. We had to have an engineer come in and determine all the water runoff. We were going to have ditches before, you know, 100 feet back from the lake going into a catch pond that, you know, and everything was about lake quality. So I can guarantee if we had went through with the development and we put everything that they wanted, our campground would be much more environmentally friendly than it is now moving forward. So put that into perspective as well. There's a lot to be gained sometimes by the development. I realize that this whole thing with waterways and them being a big corporation and stuff, that, you know what, going to spend a few $1 million is probably not the end of the world, but there is some gains out of it all. It's not all negative. I get that the part people come and whatever, but if they go and they actually do the septic beds and the stuff that the ministry wants, that's a huge gain for everybody from a lake quality point of view. So, all right.
I just want to make something clear. There are no applications in front of the township right now for any new campgrounds or any expansion to existing campgrounds. And the fact that an owner of a campground has a ton of money, or the fact that he's going week to week and has to make sure that his lots are sold, is absolutely irrelevant to the application of the rules, the bylaws. And so, no, there is nothing on the table, but we want to be prepared if something comes in to make sure that it in accordance with the set of that we have the tools to control environmental impact of it and the various other factors that comments are bringing up.
Hi, my name is Tom Hanning. I'm from Legal Network. Two of the new rules regarding the implementing bylaw. One is that you mentioned licensing for the campsites so that they can take care of the school. But don't you want the whole township to monitor equally? Like not just one group, because what's the sense in me having my septic system all up to par, which ours are inspected, we pay engineering fees, $15 every year, we have to record all the stuff. But the cottagers aren't paying the same thing. And they can be used in, the guys are worried with algae, but I'm sorry, I drive the lake too, and I see a lot of pipes coming out of places. I don't know what's on those pipes.
That's a good comment. I appreciate that comment. I'm going to take a bit of liberty here in my perspective on it. Yes, we have waterfront development guidelines, and we have septic inspection on most of our sites. So there's been a big improvement over the last 5 years. Are we going to get every cottage's septic system inspected every 2 years? No. But there are places where we know there are issues. So they will be inspected and hopefully improved. Now, as to the campground license, and I'm not speaking for the members of laying the groundwork for a discussion down the road on licensing. We don't know what's in the ground. We don't necessarily know how many approved sites we have. If you've been adding 2 sites a year, as you're allowed to under the Planning Act, without telling anybody, we kind of like to know. If you've been doing it for 20 years, that's an extra 40 sites. And if you're a 25-site campground, you're now a 65-site campground. It would kind of be nice to know. So that's the type of discussion that's going to happen when we get discussing licensing. And I think there's going to be 2 types of contributors to that discussion. One is going to be campground. What's realistic to ask of a campground? What's not realistic to ask of a campground? Also, concerned citizens in the area, and we've heard all sorts of claims about certain cottages doing this and certain campgrounds doing this and that. What are those concerns? And can those concerns be addressed with a licensing bylaw? The first step towards a licensing bylaw is finding out the actual situation of each campground. What the actual situation breaks down into, I think, has to be discussed and decided with the campgrounds. If the license is, say, $10,000, I don't think that's something reasonable. Personally, if the license is simply the cost of somebody coming in and getting a compliance letter from you showing when Ministry of Environment has inspected this, when I do it,
But the minister already asked for that.
that's right, they do.
Well, I mean,
yeah, but we don't.
So they're strict on us, so I don't know.
No, this is it. They are all very strict on you. But they're not in Rideau Lakes, we are. We don't know exactly what they're doing with it. So
It seems like these aren't shaking hands there together. Maybe it's
well,
get together a little more.
You're right. Well, you're 100% right. And we've been trying since this whole process has started. And it hasn't been easy. The best source of information is the campground.
Right, but why do you, okay, you didn't say a quota of a fee, but maybe you don't need a license, but you need that information.
Maybe that's, okay, let's use the title licensing
It's just
for
that
now.
you have written down licensing.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
That's
What it ultimately looks like, who knows at this point? You know, and one of the cottage owners has recommended something from his past work life of a compliance letter from a campground township that said, here, take this, take this, take this, take this. That's it.
But in the same token, though, we would like that from the cottagers too. You know, like
Well,
we're on road too, we want that.
No, okay.
Right?
We're straining into the other.
Sure, you're getting into the big.
Yeah. I'm actually,
Yes.
okay, I'm actually trying to forestall Councillor Banks on this. So I think you raised a valid issue. So if you could get to any other point you wish to
Oh,
make.
the next one was to do with the waterfront setbacks in that there. I'm not sure, like you're looking at like, person might only have 30 feet waterfront and they can put all this stuff up front. Like, you know, us, we have almost a whole day. Why aren't you, instead of looking at campground, why aren't you looking at the mass, the area? Instead of just say, okay, it's this standard, but these guys, everything's empty. I drive the lake and there's boathouses, this and that, all crowded in along the shoreline. And then most campgrounds go by 5. Well, 20 points. You asked for it.
I asked for it and then getting it.
Yeah, and for the gentleman over here, a lot of us do pay, on the cottagers, we do pay an extra tax. Cottagers are around $400 a year, just for the cottage, just for the building. Impact tax. On each trailer.
If they have a sunroom on them, stuff like that.
You pay for a sunroom? I know you might not know that, that's why I'm trying to.
200.
Okay, that's, there's a property tax on the campground itself. There are certain additions in the trailers that are also taxed.
Because you quoted that the church, you're paying, but they're not paying. They are. Each one.
Waterways.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Individuals.
Yeah. So.
That was important.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments, please? Anybody else?
I just want to reiterate that I don't think we're really against each other in this room. Like, the cottage owners that are in the 80, 90 chain that's been going on for a few times, mostly been water. Okay. We heard they were doubling. They got 90 boat sites now. How long before they're going to, I know there's apparently grandfathered, they can't have any more. Yeah, sure. All that, they'll want more. And right now, they put 150 sites in there, and they got the trailer and all these boats down to that public launch. That's a mess. And I can't see that it makes any sense. I mean, I don't have a problem with status quo. Like I said, it's just, and I do apologize if the guys are coming in on May the 1st and staying to the end of October, then I apologize. But I know 3 people in Waterways, they just come up on a Friday and go back Sunday. So there's a difference here, but I was referring, and I'm not sure right if Waterways added 150 sites, put big park models in there and come up on a Friday. I mean, if they stay off for 5 months, sure, they're adding to the economy. I agree.
We can't see the very many of them are doing it. Yeah, we can't see it yet. We want to be able to see it. And I think we have Duncan.
I think it's been addressed that the representative of the Campground Association, the third time I've heard somebody speak on behalf of all of the campgrounds there, and it's the third time that the people have missed what the discussion here is about. Nobody is trying to take away business from the people that already have campers. This was argued afterwards, but nobody is trying to hurt what is already here. What is trying to be done is set the rules under which we will expand the businesses that are here or that want to become here. So let's not attack or create a division that isn't there. Let's worry about
Your turn.
Hi.
I've seen you sitting there anxious to get up.
My name is Sheila DuPont, and I'm unusual in that I have been a full-time RVer, traveled for 4.5 years, had no home base, spent 6 months of the year outside of Canada, 6 months of the year here, and traveling all the time. Okay, I know a lot about campgrounds. These are all good campgrounds in this area. I've seen them all, tried to get into many of them and couldn't get a spot. But what I heard you say tonight was that you'd like to know what's going on in the campground. Have you asked them? I can only speak to the owner I know. He gives us too much information most of the time. So what I'm hearing is that it's communication that's the problem. And there were some really good recommendations tonight that we get some of the people who've got experiences, not just opinions. Because I agreed with you on some of your points when you said, yes, let's address the elephant in the room. But then when you talked about we didn't really have an economic value, you did correct that.
Sorry, let's correct.
You did correct that, and I admire that. But it's time to get a small group together and work this out. Because as was pointed out, you don't want to send it out because it's going to be appealed. Somebody's going to appeal no matter what you do. So why don't you get a small group together, work it out? But I do want to challenge you. Have you asked the campground? Because I know our owner would be the first one to step up and say, here's my plans, this is what I want to do. And the other people that I heard that are here representing your camp, you don't sound to me like someone who wouldn't communicate if you were asked. But what's happening here is we've got...
The committee has visited some campground and has talked with the campground and have got the information we have asked. Okay? Good. Yeah, but this was the first occasion in 20 years, it's amalgamation. Okay? Because the township is extremely busy doing all sorts of other things, and now this issue comes to it. And like you say, time to address it. Time to have transparency shared by everyone, and then move forward as a team.
Exactly.
Township president.
And that's what's missing, the team effort. Because what we're doing instead is we're coming out with a bunch of things that appear punitive. Like we want the campgrounds to put up all kinds of money if they want to do a little bit of infrastructure, and it could be held for a year. Come on, folks. You're just everyday people who happen to own the campground. Yes, in Kingston, where I come from, you can do it because they're doing million and billion dollar developments. But you have to find something that works here. And that's the part that I've listened all night. I've attended every meeting. I've driven very crazy. I've been after you, Brittany.
They're still saying.
You got to start
They're
talking.
Still saying.
Okay.
And that's the reason I was speaking. Promote communication.
But I think that you got to get a small team together. It's been suggested. Make something that fits here instead of sending it off to an appeal board. You're not going to like, somebody's going to be really unhappy with it. That's all I'm saying.
Good comments. Thank you. Sly smile. So I'm afraid.
I just have a quick question. I just wanted to declare my name is Sue Ivy. I am a cottager on the upper state. I just have a question. In terms of this you propose, though, if a campground were to pull a trailer off of the site, let's make it controversial, a waterfront site, would that trigger any kind of new requirements? So do I need to pull a permit? Does that trigger anything?
We'll let Fotenn.
Through Mr. Chair, I guess the question is a little unclear to me. Is that a permanent removal or a seasonal?
Seasonal. So they just want to switch out a camper. Maybe they want to go from maybe the current occupant has, let's make it controversial again. Maybe the current occupant has a travel trailer and they want to put a park model.
So that's that example. In that situation, under the new zoning bylaw standard, the upgrade to a park model, in order for that to be achieved, the site would have to be at least 300 horsepower.
Okay.
You repeat that, please?
Through Mr. Chair, in that specific example, in order to upgrade from an RV or a fifth wheel or travel trailer to a park model, the site would have to be at least 304 square meters.
So I would see that as
That's nothing.
that's the current
Okay, well,
proposal,
okay,
though.
let's just
So-
focus on Sue's question.
So just based on that, as a business person, I would view that as particularly problematic. If I'm trying to run my business, grow my business, which I think most of these organizations, they're small businesses, and they're trying to sustain their businesses, whether it's sustainment or growth to some degree. So if I've got 5 sites in a row, and now to be able to move that trailer in or out, I have to change the whole side. Like it's impractical. It's a bizarre requirement to now implement on a current campsite owner.
That's just a comment. Not what you're going to
Does that make sense?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it has been discussed at this committee before, and the intention when this came before PAC was. My apologies. Thank you. When this particular matter came up at PAC previously, the direction from PAC was that, if I recall correctly, that this not be an issue, that in those situations those sites would be grandfathered in. So the draft that was presented tonight did not incorporate that particular feedback. That is an oversight on our part. That is, I think, fundamentally the intention that those sites would be grandfathered in and could be upgraded.
That's awesome. Because what's concerning to me is that we've heard a lot of current campgrounds don't need to worry. All this is about only expansion. But when you're trying to run your business on a day-to-day basis, and that's what these folks, there's several of them here tonight, which I think is awesome. To have to operate at that granular a level it's impractical, and it's a little impactful from a business point of view. And I would encourage you to just.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I said you had a sly smile coming up. Sure, what you're going do we have any other comments, questions? Okay, what I'd like.
Sorry, I have a question. I'm not clear on that. My name is Karen Blair, and I'm so that will be added then. That's the concern. That is the concern for my campus. Don't fall into a lot of the other things that are going on, but if we start, trailers, they aren't bringing a different trailer. I don't think I should whatever for being lost. I've already been approved for that. Literally, that 65 sites has been there for over 50 years. My site.
Okay, Tara, I think I'll ask Brittany to address that one.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify my understanding that you have a current campsite, and it is under the 304 square meters, and you wanted to replace your current travel trailer. So I'm not saying parking lot trailer. If you wanted to replace your travel trailer with another travel trailer, but it's still below the travel trailer minimum lot size, my understanding is you can replace legs for them. However, if you want to replace a travel trailer with a park model trailer, ultimately you would be worsening the standard, because the standard lot site size for a park model trailer versus a travel trailer is not as larger than the other. I would suggest that the planning advisory committee at the next meeting make a recommendation specifically addressing the grandfather and that Fotenn would also provide comment specifically addressing that, and that way campground operators have clear direction when a future decision.
So you'll have an answer in the future on that.
Right, I can just on that. You're pretty good of a stranglehold, so to speak, on those sites, because now I have a site that I had a 26 trailer on. Our sites are fairly large. Now I've got somebody put a 40-foot on, and they can't. Now I'm who I can now rent a site to based on the size of their camper, even though it may or may not fall in that size restriction. I think if we're grandfathered, those are our sites. Like,
Yeah, I think
if
what
our
the issue.
55 sites, they're our sites.
Okay,
Now
Karen,
we're gonna start picking and choosing what size trailers we put into those sites.
yeah, well, this is why it was a point of discussion that has not been addressed so far. So we will be addressing that at the next PAC committee, and we'll go from there on that. Okay, Duncan, and then
I will take the other side of that discussion. Not particularly because of water, and I understand the management issue. But I can think of at least one area where next to a farm, a travel trailer was changed, and a park model put in, and it is within 10 feet of the fence of that farm. The farmer no longer can graze cattle there because there's interference with people and so on and so on. It has nothing to do with the campground, but you have to be careful, especially when it's adjacent to another type of use, because your margins get closer.
okay,
The farmer who's been in there and his family for 200 years.
okay, just a minute. Tara, please. I think you've raised a good point, as has been raised before. So I think we will address that, and you will have clear direction. And I personally have some on how it should go, but I'll save that for the PAC meeting. And Duncan, I understand that. The cow issue to me is a separate one. And I know
just
exactly.
pointing out that there are issues.
Yeah.
When the minimum site size was 60 square meters,
Yes.
and it's now going to 304,
Yeah.
over time there's going to be some issues.
Yeah, and there always are going to be. Sure, you're next.
So,
Your name, please.
Mike Balfour. How are you?
Yeah, let them see you.
No, you deserve that.
No, I don't need to vote. So, going to Tara's comment.
Who are you again?
Mike Balfour. So, going to Tara's comment about trailers and sizes, I have a 36-foot trailer with 2 tip heads. My 36-foot trailer with 2 tip heads would be the exact same size as one of the other larger, what do you call it, modular or park models. So, it would be almost identical to a park model. So, a lot of people I know in our park and different parks that I travel around all the time with my trailer. It's kind of semi-permanent now at Otter Lake Campground. They're the same size when you compare the size of the trailers. And traveling around and people in and out, there's none of that in ours. But I know people are upgrading. Some people come to a certain length of time. They've had that trailer 10, 15 years. And there's been a couple that are looking now for newer trailers. And they're the exact same footprint, but you can get a park model that fits the exact same size as their travel trailer. So kind of putting those two as identical trailers is not true. Separate trailers is not true. Because you can have them the identical size, the identical footprint when you add in all the tip outs and everything else that are on them. And some of the travel trailers, a friend of mine has a 38-foot that's double the size of mine because he has 3 tip outs. He has 2 on one side and then a jumbo on the other. So when you're talking lot sizes and thinking of spacing, you can't say that they're totally different because they can be the exact same. So that's something you need to look at also.
Those are good points, yeah.
So when you're pulling in and out trailers, it's something you've got to look at. And a lot of us are here tonight, I know from the campground, a few have already left. We didn't know that any of this grandfather. And that's the main reason we're here. We're looking through there and it said nothing in any of the documents that previous campgrounds had grandfathered. And I think that caused a lot of stress that everybody's worried about cottagers and stuff. Like my family has a cottage on Otter Lake for many years. I couldn't afford to get there. So for me to be back on the lake with my family, I'm in the campground and I love it. And the campgrounds themselves are a big fan. So we're not trying to fight with cottagers. The cottagers right next to us in the campground are on the campground 90% of the time, and they're over at their own cottages and their own houses. So that debate, if I understand what everybody's worried about by impact assessments and everything else and density populations of big campgrounds, if it's an in and out campground instead of being permanent residence, that's a big difference if you're having, like you're talking about, these hundreds of sites at the other campgrounds. Because I've traveled to a lot of those campgrounds. And in and outs are a lot different. And somebody was saying here it'd be nice if there's more in and out sites. It's the same aspect for the campground owner though. For in and out campers, they affect your regular campers that are living on those sites. Because you don't know what the behavior is going to be. You don't know if you're going to stay up and party all night long. And I've been on sites in the U.S. where they've gone up at 10 o'clock at night and called the police and had 5 trailers pulled out of their campground because they had to deal with transient campers. So there's a little bit of both sides. But if you're having seasonal campgrounds, I think you got the best of everything. And we're all here to support the community. Perfect.
Are we lining up behind
We're in
Dale
charge
to
for the
make
same
more
reason.
comments?
Yeah. Nice to see everyone here. My name's Dale Jones. I've lived in this township my entire life. 62 years old, now have a seasonal at Sunnyside, and just so grateful to be able to be on the Rideau and enjoy the Rideau. My parents worked here all their life. My mom used to do laundry at the Outer Lake Motel and hang it out on the clothesline because that's what the tourists that came in like that smell. Did it in a Bringer washing machine. So that's my history here. I came in late and missed some of the slides, but everything that has to do with the environment that I've seen is already covered. Rideau Valley Conservation has it. The Ministry of the Environment has it. Big Rideau Lake Association. We're just reinventing the wheel on all this stuff. I love the environment. I love the trees. That's why I'm living here. And yeah, we need to preserve this. But I think we're spending a lot of time reinventing the wheel here on all this environmental stuff. The campgrounds have their own rules. I worked as a first responder, as a paramedic for over 25 years. I responded to problems at a lot more cottages than I did campgrounds. But the campgrounds are already governed, they have their rules. And I think by doing what the council's been forced to do because of waterways, it possibly is opening up another Pandora's box. I grew up in Portland. I've seen the expansion of what now Bayview Yacht Harbor. They've got 200 boats sitting in the water there. What impact do they have on the environment? Where does the sewage go for them? But I don't know. Somebody fill me in if they know Bayview Yacht Harbor has a proper sewage field to dispose of that. Lens Cove's the same way. I worked at Lens Cove as a kid. They dumped it in a tank. Where it went from there? At 14, I don't care. I'm doing my job. So I think the council has utilized a lot of energy for this. The gentleman that spoke up, the one comment I have on what you said, it's your opinion. I appreciate that. You made the one comment about we. I don't know who we was. So we wasn't me as a citizen here, as a lifetime resident of here. I enjoy the cottages. My family made a livelihood. They survived on the cottages. They worked on the lake doing repairs and building. So I think my opinion is, and my feedback to council is, let Rideau Valley do their job. Let Ministry of Environment do their job. Let all these other agencies do their job they're already doing. Let's deal with waterways as the potential problem that may be. Let's restrict. Let's make the rules around that. At Sunnyside, I don't know where you're going to expand, right? You're looking at putting in a sewage field at the back of the property. Well, from there on, you're 3/4 kilometer away from the lake. So I don't know, that's the other thing that has the township asked. Other than waterways, are any of the other guys looking at expanding, or can they expand? Delta Park maybe can expand a little bit, so they're opening their field up and put some services in there, but there's not a lot of room for expansion, and we're wasting a lot of time and energy here on something that likely is not going to happen other than what they're proposing at waterways.
Thank you very much, Dale. Do we have anybody else lining up? Everybody has a chance. Oh, Kevin. And no, Kevin, I'm not going to sell you my lot.
Probably wasn't going to speak because I don't speak very well, but I do want to
identify yourself.
My name is Kevin Scott. I own Sunnyside Campground. I want to thank probably at least a third of the room is from Sunnyside here tonight. I want to thank you all for coming out and supporting us.
Speak louder.
I appreciate, again, our members for coming out and supporting us. I do want to, there's some discrepancies between, again, we're back into the cottage camper fight. There is some discrepancies between cottages and campers that have not necessarily been put forth. Cottagers are using their places 12 months a year. Campgrounds don't. We are only open maybe 6 months. When you're talking about taxes and so forth, and taxes go to municipal services, our members are only there 6 months a year. Cottage people, they get to use it 12 months of the year. Your municipal services 12 months a year. A lot of the seasonal cottage people, especially over the last 2 years, have now become full-time residents. So they're the services that they're using is so much more than the people that are cottagers. Campgrounds, we're businesses. We have to generate revenues off of our property. Some of these setbacks and so forth that we're talking about, 30 meters off the fence lines and so forth, we have to, the revenues we generate are from the properties that we own. And, you know, to put us into a restriction and have the setbacks off of these lot lines will decrease the amount that we can generate off of our property. And that's what we're in business for. We're in business to generate. And I think some of the restrictions are going to restrict us being able to do that. Right now, Rideau Lakes is in a crisis because we don't have accommodation for people to come to Rideau Lakes to enjoy as visitors. It's a crisis. We don't have enough accommodation, whether it be cottages in the real estate market, whether it be campgrounds. Every campground that I know is nearly 100% full. We can't accept any more visitors into Rideau Lakes. Well, Rideau Lakes is a tourist destination for most of Ontario. If we don't have places for these people to come, then they're going to go elsewhere, and along with their tax dollars. And that is an impact to all residents, because those tax dollars go into the structure and infrastructure and the services that Rideau Lakes provides. If we don't have those people coming in, we do support, and we have done studies about how much money our members spend. Last year, we took 10 members, and they spent anywhere between $3,500 and $7,500 extra in our township in the 6-month period that they're there. So we have done those studies. We know that they have an impact. So if we don't allow, I've asked the Ontario Camping Association, how many new parks are actually coming on? 0. There are no new campgrounds. So part of this study is not even going to be implemented because people can't, you just heard from Bass Lake, he can't even expand because all of the hurdles we have to go through, we can't even make it even reasonable to put in new sites because of all the stuff we have to go through. Therefore, we're not going to invite more people to Rideau Lakes. The current campgrounds in Rideau Lakes have to have some area to develop, or we're not going to have people coming and enjoying Rideau Lakes. They can't come and buy a cottage anymore because there is none available. They have to come. We have to provide an economical situation for families to come to Rideau Lakes and enjoy their summers and spend their tourist dollars. And right now there isn't, and it's a crisis. And that's part of, I don't think council understands. If we don't allow, again, do it responsibly, absolutely. Do it environmentally, absolutely. That has to be done so that we can reclaim some of that in revenue. And right now we can't expand because there's no way how to do it.
Why do you?
Because we need accommodation.
Okay,
you need the tourists.
Just a minute.
You need the tourists to come to Rideau Lake because they provide you the services. Because they pay for the guy to pick up your garbage. They pay for the ambulance service in your community.
Okay, just a minute. Ross, please. Please. Kevin, finalize your points. I think I know where you're going.
Anyways, I thought I needed to at least speak up on those topics. That there is a crisis in Rideau Lake. Don't have the accommodation. And don't get me wrong, I'm not looking to expand. Right now, you know, we don't have areas to expand and everything, but I do think that there's a crisis in Rideau Lakes that we are not seeing there. We need a way for people to come to Rideau Lake.
We all see it because, like you say, at least once a week, if somebody comes up
We don't have places to get it.
I think the point's been well made in that sense. Are you going to try and rebut, or do you have a new?
I have a new point.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a new point about life in general. Why do you need more people? You've got a happy community. Why do you need more? The only people who are benefiting more, and that's fine, are the businesses that are here and whatever. So, but we don't need to grow. It's like, why does Canada need to be 50 million people? They don't need to be 50 million people.
Okay, Ross.
No, but seriously, why do
Quiet,
you need,
everybody. Ross,
why do you need, okay, you don't need
just a
more
minute.
people.
Ross, just a minute. You're getting into a much broader issue, which is not related to the subject we're discussing tonight. So I'm going to cut you off with that.
Okay, just one last thing.
One last comment.
The last thing he said was that they're paying for us and paying for our services. I made the point, they don't pay any taxes on that
Ross,
big
we know the
360 acres.
discrepancy. We know the discrepancy.
Well, then that statement can't be made like that.
The statement can be made because it's.
Well, then I can make a rebuttal statement.
No,
that I'm
Ross, you're out of order. Please, enough. And Paula, no, sorry, I think that's enough tonight. I think you're right. I think we're going to go to the discussion within the committee itself. You're all welcome to stay, and we're going to discuss and ask some questions amongst ourselves and of Fotenn. And well, thank you very, very much for coming out. Okay, the meeting isn't over, everybody. You're welcome to stay. Pardon? We're going to hear from there. Yes. Yes. And we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back to the committee discussion. Hey everyone. I've been not chairing this committee for almost 2 years. It's the first chance I've had to use the gavel. I've been waiting a long time for this.
You do it well.
Yeah. As long as my other hand isn't underneath it. Okay, what we're going to go do right now is basically go into a discussion within the committee. You all know, I've mentioned before, the number of written comments we've received, and a number of them have been raised tonight, along with some new ones, which is quite interesting. I'm glad to see. And keep sending them in. The email is planning@rideaulakes.ca. Oh, I gotta do a resolution. I was a bureaucrat, and you know what? I hate bureaucracy, but I have to do this before I let my colleagues talk. And I have it moved by Marcia Maxwell and seconded by Ari Hogenboom that the Planning Advisory Committee acknowledges the presentation from Fotenn regarding the Tourist Campgrounds land use study, proposed zoning bylaw, and official plan amendments. All in favor? Carries. And I have it moved by Councillor Banks and seconded by Councillor Maxwell that the Planning Advisory Committee acknowledges the written and verbal comments received regarding the Tourist Campgrounds land use study and will duly review and consider all viewpoints when making a formal recommendation to Council on the proposed zoning bylaw and official plan amendments. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, now I'd like to ask members of the committee if they have any comments that you'd like to make. Wide open comments, wide open discussion. Harold?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to take the opportunity to thank those folks that took the time tonight to show up. My comments aren't going to be that long because I know that my plan is to get out of here by 9 o'clock. All right? Those that don't know, I'm a homeowner in Rideau Lakes, but I also have a cottage in Bass Lake, and I can tell you that I've been camping since I was a kid. My parents took me camping. I took my kids camping. Today I was camping with my grandchild. So I think camping is an important part of the experience if you're going to live in a community with a lot of water. And I want to say right off front that, for me, preserving our water and our environmental, our water-based resources are my number one priority in this township. So you may not have heard it before, Gil, but you're hearing it tonight, okay? But I want to also say that whatever we do as a committee and as a council has to pass muster as good planning. Because we know that the likelihood is that if we make decisions that are positive for one side of this equation or for the other side, the opposite side is likely to appeal, and the land use tribunal forum will end up making some final decisions. So I also want to say that I support that all the existing campgrounds are grandfathered. Okay? This is not about those campgrounds. But when we set rules for future campgrounds, we cannot just set the rules for the waterway campground. We have to set them for all campgrounds going forward. So this is about expansions and about new campgrounds that might decide that they want to set up shop in Rideau Lakes. And I hope that we put rules in place that will make it more difficult to expand or to open up a new campground. And I know the importance of tourism, but we need to make sure that those rules from an environmental perspective are strong enough that campgrounds in the future do not create issues for water quality. And it's not just the campgrounds or the cottages that are creating issues with green algae and water quality. Those are a whole lot of things. And I think as a council, we've been very proactive in this whole area because we've gone from voluntary septic inspection to 150 a year to 300 a year. And we'll probably look at that number again when the new council comes in to sort of say, how are we going to get ahead of that curve? Because every individual septic system out there presents a certain amount of risk to the environment. And if you can afford a spot on the water, whether it's at a campground or a private cottage or a permanent residence, you can afford to make damn sure that you have a proper septic system in place. So that would be my expectations if I'm fortunate enough to continue to be your mayor. Those are my comments. I want to say as well that I have not closed the door on looking at density metrics. I've yet to be convinced by professional planners both here and on staff that that is the route to go. I think that many of the rules that we've talked about already will in fact serve to control density, whether it's a lake impact study, a hydrological study, a traffic study. There's going to be all kinds of ways that we can turn down a future expansion if we don't feel that it's going to be good for the environment. And licensing is the other issue that hasn't been sorted out yet, will not be sorted out until we have a new council. But I'm not necessarily convinced that, and I might have been in the minority here on the planning committee, that licensing is necessary. I tend to trust that the information that's going to be provided to us as a municipality from the campgrounds will be honest and truthful, and that the other agencies, the conservation authorities, the Ministry of Environment will do their job, and if they don't do their job, we'll try to hold them accountable to do that. So, and the other point that I wanted to make is that we did go out as a committee. We met with a number of campgrounds. We met with the residents, the neighbors from Hudson Bay and around waterways, and we had some very good discussions with both of those groups. So there wasn't sort of the ones, there's been a lot of consultation that's gone on already, and this is part of that process to give us even more information before we finalize this process. And the last point I want to make is that there was a lot of points about shopping locally, and I want to thank the folks in this room if you shop locally, because that's critical to us and our economy, and I thank you for that if you do shop locally, and I hope you would continue to do that. So those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And I have to also admit that shopping in the village of Westport is local, even though they're not part of Rideau Lakes. But their residents come and shop in Rideau Lakes too, so we surround them, so they're all local. And any other comments, members? Councillor Banks.
So my thought on the licensing is that we're not getting the proper information, and I think that for us to have some kind of a process in place is a benefit for all people who live in the Rideau Lakes. We just cannot just say to the campgrounds that we're not going to continue on with this ICB and that's the end. We have to have some kind of regulations in place. It's like the highway. When you drive down the highway, you can't go over 80 kilometers an hour. If they took all the speed signs down, everything would be a run amok. And so it's not that we're trying to punish the campgrounds that are in place now. It's to set some kind of regulation so that we have some kind of control on what's going to happen further down the road. I'm not impressed with the Ministry of Environment. I have a letter from the Ministry of Environment that says they rely on the campgrounds to get their information and they're not doing the inspections. That troubles me a lot. I'm very confused at why we can't get MOE in to do their inspections and why they're not doing them. And I think everybody that has a property on the lake or has a campground, they need to be aware of this because something's gone wrong with the MOE, that whether they don't have enough staff, that's not my problem, that's their problem. They need to make sure that they have enough staff to enforce their regulations, especially if they're going to do yearly inspections. So the other issue was the marine facilities. I just wanted to make a comment that there's a low high water mark on the Rideau Canal. That's Parks Canada that's going to make that decision. So I don't know whether we should be delving into that or not. I think maybe something that could be in other inland lakes, that's fine, but the majority of the stuff I guess would be Otter Lake and Rideau. But I think that's something that we have to take a look at. The other issue was somebody mentioned that they had a 36-foot trailer, and it's the size of a park mall, 550 square meters, which is with 3 tippets. The trailer that he pulls down the road is only 8 feet 6 inches wide. That's the max that you can pull down the highway. That's it. So if you take that and multiply that by the 8.5, you're looking at 268 square feet. If you had a tippet for the whole side of one trailer, you'd add another 100 feet. So it's only 350 feet. The park model trailers are 50 square meters, which is about 550 square feet. We're getting into a cottage, and I have a concern with that because what's happening is that all the trailers are sooner or later going to have permanent residents in these campgrounds. And is that the way we want to go? I don't know. That's why we need to have a committee that's going to have some of the people in the campgrounds and some of the people from the cottagers so that we can sit down and do this. Us just making these decisions by ourselves is not the right way to do it. But we have to be mindful of the lake. We have to make sure that all the environmental processes in the campground are being followed. And as I said, that's about all I've got with the campgrounds. I would like to see one final comment. I'd like to see something put in place that like a minimum of 5 campsites for transient people, because that issue has been raised, and there's no transient campgrounds. Like it's hard to find a campground, and it would be fair to other people who want to come here that if they had 4 or 5 sites, it's not much to do. It can be done and say, well, I expanded those in the last 2 years. Those are my 3 sites. So, anyways, that's what I'm at.
Hey, any other councillor comments? Sure, please.
I do agree with a lot of what Councillor Banks has said, but I also recall while I was hearing the comments earlier that we haven't got enough accommodation, and that has been a problem. I think we need even something more than camping in the area. We have Skate the Lake in Portland in the middle of the winter, and people have nowhere to stay in the township. We need more accommodation to serve all people. It'd be great to have something in Portland that people could come and visit boaters that are coming in off the waterway. I have some big dreams for the future. Don't know if it's going to happen. Going back to the campsites, my one concern, we've talked amongst the committee, that there isn't really a lot more land available for cottages in the township. And I am concerned about the density issue. I don't want to see that, the campgrounds get expanded so much that, it's providing places because there isn't any place else to do it and get it too dense in one location. And part of the reason I like going through this process is to have a plan for the future of what's going to happen if a big conglomerate does come in and wants to put in something really huge. And really more of cottages in one location, but multiple quantity of them. And I've also heard that some of these, they're charging, you're looking for an inexpensive way of being able to enjoy the environment and the outdoors, but some of these larger ones, they're charging $5,000 and $8,000 a year, and you have to have a $100,000 and $150,000 trailer to go on the site, and that's not affordable. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Delaney.
I might as well speak. I'm the newbie back on this committee because I moved on economic development when the council changed over, but I've been put back on planning to replace Councillor Smith, who's on maternity leave. So I have missed a lot of the preamble to this as far as visiting campgrounds. I have followed all of the emails and all of the discussion, and I've read up on things, but I haven't physically been out. However, I did manage to visit a few private ones, Santa Cam, and I've been to Indian Lake Marina because I live at Chafee's. So I really agree with my colleagues, and the point that really gets me is that people that come to visit Chafee's, and I go over to the lock all the time. It's one of our hot spots in the township as far as tourism. People are constantly looking for somewhere to stay, looking for somewhere to buy, and there's nothing. They wander around and they ask and they drive up and down the roads looking for houses that are available. There's nothing left because of the housing shortage, because of the environment at Chafee's, and I really do think that barring somebody building hotels and motels, which is probably won't happen on septic systems, I think the campground expansions that are regulated are the only way for us to provide any more accommodations. Like, we don't have any more housing stock. B&Bs are booked up solid. The private homes being rented are booked up solid. People are booking a year or 2 years ahead of time to get accommodation. So what about the tourist that wanders in and says, this is so nice, I'd like to stay 3 or 4 days. Like, they'll ask me and I'll say, good luck, because it's just not there. So something has to be done to address that. As far as that's my economic development coming out here with the committee, the other committee that I'm on. But I felt tonight it was a very worthwhile exercise because I could see both sides starting to see each other's point of view. And it was very gratifying, and thank you for coming out.
Well, I'm not going to say very much because I've said enough tonight already. I've been absorbing everything I've heard along with all the emails over the last 2 years and the various meetings that we've had and meeting different people. And I just want to thank you all for coming here. It's great to see it in person, actually see people rather than screens. And we're going to consider everything, all the comments we've received to date. And there were some good ones, lots of good ones in all of the other comments. And there were some good ones here tonight too. And I think individually we're each going to have to judge which ones suit ourselves and then debate amongst ourselves what direction we want to move forward. So again, thank you very, very much. And September 14th is the next Planning Advisory Committee meeting. And that's where we're going to have a substantive discussion, recommendations, I hope. And then the October 4th council meeting will hopefully wrap this process up. I'd just like to let Fotenn say a final word, and then we'll close out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to say as well, thank you for the discussion this evening. Thanks to everyone who's come out. Thank you for everyone who's come out, and I appreciate the discussion this evening. It has been very helpful for us as well. I have a question for the committee. That's one of the items that came out sort of near the end of the public comments and questions there that I think warrants a little further clarification, is the question of grandfathering and the degree to which grandfathering would apply in light of the recommendations around trailer site sizes. And if the committee will meet again in September, on September 14th to discuss the issue, I believe this matter would benefit from being clarified at that time. And if there's any assistance or support that Fotenn can provide in terms of clarifying the issue, of course, we're happy to use.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much. So I'd just like, again, thank you, everybody, and I'd like to declare the meeting adjourned at 8:49. So Mayor Hogan can get up by 9. Again, thanks a lot.
All